Hi, you are on the channel A Brief Retelling, and today I will tell you about the movie One Day of the End of the World. Enjoy watching. Young, cynical businessman Claudio Verona, as usual, is heading to the office. At the entrance, he is met by a young intern, Sylvia, who is trying her best to please the business shark. A man greedy for women notes her initiative and informs her that she has been accepted into the headquarters. Heading to his office, Claudio enters the elevator, where he accidentally meets Marta. There was a relationship between the young people for several months, but the girl decided to break up with the boss because her boyfriend proposed to her. Besides, the lover is married, and the supporting role does not suit her. Claudio tries to convince Marta that only he can give her real feelings, but she rudely lets the man know that her decision is final and not subject to discussion. When the former mistress comes out on her floor, the businessman answers the call of his wife. Lorena anxiously reports that there are many reports in the news about mass riots on the streets of the city. At this moment, the elevator gets stuck, and Claudio ends the conversation. After reporting the breakdown, he calls his assistant Sarah and asks her to detain an important client, to whom he is in a hurry to meet. After spending more than half an hour in prison, the man receives a message that Santi did not wait for him and is going to go about his business. Claudio becomes enraged and asks the dispatcher to give him the phone number of the repairman. When he calls them, he hears that they start shouting loudly and then the connection is cut off. Realizing that help is not in a hurry, the man tries to open the doors on his own. He only manages to push the doors apart a few centimeters when Lorena calls. She reports that someone is very insistently knocking on the door of their apartment. The woman is very scared, also because the landline phones do not work, and of course it is impossible to call the police from a mobile phone. The husband tells his wife to lock herself in the bedroom and promises to send an assistant to sort everything out. A couple of minutes later, a call comes from Lorena again. She talks about the news that is broadcast on television. People on the streets seem to have gone mad and are rioting. The authorities believe that this is some kind of terrorist attack. After hanging up the phone, Claudio sees the crack of the door and how Marta begs him for help. But something unknown drags her out of sight of the man. He wonders what is happening outside until the disfigured Marta and another employee of the company appear in the crevice. They have turned into zombies and are now trying to pull a terrified man out of the elevator to eat fresh flesh.
Сюда! Сюда!
After dialing the number of his assistant Stefan, who is supposed to come to his wife, Verona tells about the horror he just experienced. In response, the man calms the boss, and at this moment, the connection is cut off. A completely desperate businessman presses the dispatcher's call button again, and he reports that he cannot contact the repair team in any way. Claudio hears terrible screams on the other end of the line, and then everything subsides. Trying to get through to at least someone, the man approaches the crack in the door and falls into the hands of the zombie Martha. He manages to escape. In order to escape, he tears off the handrail and kills the woman. And so that the corpse does not lie before his eyes, pushes him away with the same handrail. Taking out the papers from the briefcase, the man begins to fastidiously cover the bloodstains that got inside the cabin. A few minutes later, he sees a frightened Sylvia. Together, they try to push the elevator doors wider to let the girl inside. But when she hears someone approaching, she runs further down the corridor. At this moment, an infected man appears in the doorway. He bloodthirstingly stretches his hands towards the prisoner of the elevator, but suddenly, someone hits him on the head. It was Sylvia who came back to help the boss. However, she herself cannot escape because a crowd of zombies pounces on her.
Нет! 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 Сюда иди! Нет! Нет!
Taking his mobile, Claudio goes online and sees that all the news is written about the mass infection of people. He dials his wife's number and exhales with relief when he hears her voice. Lorena is very scared because she saw with her own eyes how the zombies attacked the reporter. At this moment, monsters break into the woman's apartment and the man is forced to listen to her last calls for help into the phone. A few hours later, an escaped employee appears in the corridor. He asks to get inside the elevator, but the doors are jammed and they cannot be opened until the end. Claudio looks devastated as another living person dies before his eyes. When a crowd of zombies begins to break into the elevator, Sarah appears at the end of the corridor. Claudio tries to distract the monsters on himself, but they rush towards a new victim, and the man watches with horror the next death of a person. Turning on the news release on the phone, the man sees that the wrath of heaven has descended on the city because something incredible is happening around. The lights turn off in the building, and after a while a man from the special forces appears in front of the elevator. Claudio is glad that help has come to him, but the policeman upsets him. He came alone because he can't get in touch with the headquarters. Marcello leaves him a walkie-talkie and a gun, and he goes to look for a shield to turn on the electricity. When the fighter leaves, Verona listens with a sinking heart to everything that he describes to him on the radio. The whole building is littered with furniture and covered in blood, but the man manages to gradually move towards the goal. A few minutes later, the building's light turns on. Claudio sees that the elevator doors have moved slightly, but something prevents them from opening. At this moment, they appear in the hole. Zombies. Remembering Marcello's instructions, he takes a gun and starts shooting at the creatures.
Лей!
Still in shock, Claudio hears on the radio how the commando is fighting off the infected. When everything stops, he understands that he had lost another hope of salvation. After sitting in suspense all night, Verona comes to the idea of suicide. He is about to put a bullet in his head when he hears Marcello's already familiar voice. He was able to get into the elevator shaft and climb into the cabin through the ceiling. Sitting on the floor, the man discusses what happened. The Special Forces soldier is sure that scientists have invented some kind of virus and could not keep it in the walls of the laboratory. He says that in just a couple of hours, the city turned into the abode of bloodthirsty monsters. When it comes to family, Marcello talks about the shelter to which all family members of law enforcement agencies were sent. Claudio, in turn, talks about how he was forced to listen to the death cries of his wife. He also complains that a few hours earlier, they had quarreled over an ordinary bottle of milk. At this moment, Marcello starts coughing up blood. It turns out that he was injured, and now, realizing that he is about to turn into a zombie, he asks his new friend to save him from torment. Verona is waiting until the last. When he turns into a zombie, with tears in his eyes, Claudio fires a bullet into his head. After another day, Claudio, periodically shooting zombies who are trying to get into the elevator, answers a phone call from an unfamiliar number. When he hears his wife's voice, he cannot hold back tears of joy and thanks the Lord that his wife is alive. Lorena says that she managed to run out of the apartment, where she was met by the military and taken to a shelter. At this point, the conversation is interrupted because the phone is running low. Inspired by the fact that the meaning of life is not lost, Claudio knocks out the detail that prevented the elevator doors from opening and gets out. He makes his way through the mountains of corpses and goes outside. There, he sees complete devastation and a few more zombies. The military covers him from the attackers, giving him the opportunity to get to the shelter. That's how an ordinary elevator breakdown saved a life and gave a seemingly completely lost person a new meaning for existence. That's all for today. If you liked it, subscribe and like it.